and welcome to Hopeful Conversations, brought to you by Robbie's Hope Foundation. I am your host, Kari Eckert. Joining me today is Tim Parent. Tim is an author, the host of a weekly podcast entitled Above Ground Podcast for the past 3.5 years, and a father. Tim, your book is titled Never Underestimate the Power of You. Tim believes we all have mental health and we all have the ability to improve. I certainly agree with that statement. Tim, thanks so much for joining us today on Hopeful Conversations.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Let's get started. Can you tell a little bit about your journey with your own mental health and your current perspective on mental health as a whole?
So a little bit about my journey. I guess I'm probably a little bit older than some of your listeners. So I guess I would say my whole life that I had dealt with anxiety and some mental health challenges. Didn't realize exactly what they were, exactly how much they affected me until maybe 10 years ago. Okay. And I've been going to therapy a while, but it didn't really come to a halt until like 2017, 2018. I had my own personal crisis and ended up in an outpatient program where I learned about DBT and emotions and all these things. So I was a bit older, I would say, than most learning this stuff. But better late than never, as they say.
Yes.
So I guess I come to it more on the education side. I believe that the more knowledge we have, the more conversations we have around these topics, the better off that others will be and that we will be. Because, talking with people, and I know from my own experiences, carrying that weight on yourself and not being able to talk to a friend or a professional is heavy, and it can weigh you down. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it can contribute to what you're already dealing with. So.
Mm-hmm. Put you in a spiral. Yeah. I feel like, I don't know, post-COVID, maybe we shouldn't even say that, but I hope we're post-COVID. I feel like there's a little bit more awareness that we should be talking about mental health. And I think that's, I don't know, I like to be the glass is half full type person. And that's the good thing that we can take from COVID. Because I feel like the isolation and so much that happened at the beginning of COVID brought awareness to just that what you said is dealing with things alone and carrying it alone is just so unhealthy for us and such a weight. I don't know. I feel like a lot of people were wearing masks of all types prior to wearing masks just to keep those COVID germs away.
Well said.
Yeah. Okay. So can you tell me about Above Ground, your podcast, and what inspired you to create the podcast? Maybe potentially a different platform to spread awareness about mental health?
Sure. Well, the other half, Will, who we've been friends for years and years, multiple years, actually, a long time. We used to work together for a short period. We're both heavily into music, big music fans. And one day we actually kind of grew apart a little bit and didn't talk for a little while. One day we ran into each other and kind of were on the same path at different stages, maybe in different angles. And so we talked about it, and I said something about doing I wanted to do some kind of a blog or podcast. And he's like, "Oh, I've been listening to podcasts. I love that stuff. Like I would totally do that. I would like to do that myself." So, again, we just kind of talked more and more about it, and we come at it more from the peer perspective instead of the prospective. We come from our own experiences and our own perspectives, if that makes sense. We just,
it does, yes.
We just feel that having these conversations will decrease the stigma and hopefully help it more typical for people to talk about their problems, or just when someone's talking about their problems, then maybe they won't feel as awkward.
Right. Right. Yeah, I often say I have the opportunity to talk to parents about talking to their youth, to teenagers about mental health. And it's like, this should be a conversation at every single dinner table. Like, this isn't something to be talked about only in a therapist's office.
Absolutely.
Like,
I agree. And
yeah,
I think what you're
yeah,
doing is amazing. I personally believe that that's where we need to focus is more on the younger kids, younger adults, whatever you want to call them, teens, because having a teen myself, yeah, I can sit there and talk with him about it, but does he really listen to me? And it's anybody out there with a teen knows how hard that it is.
oh, it's very difficult. Yeah, probably one of the most difficult parts of parenting.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I like to,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
well, I just like to say that there's one mouth and two ears.
Yes.
And you need to listen in that proportion when you're trying to help or understand a young person.
Yeah, and it's hard for if it's a single parent situation, and maybe that parent deals with mental health challenges themselves. So you if they're not aware enough in the moment, then they could be passing on stuff down to the child that they may not know of. So it's not intentional, and I'm not pointing blame at anyone, but it could happen.
Yeah, I think it's a kind of a natural part of
Absolutely.
parenting. Like, you think you have like this wisdom and you think you remember what it was like to be a teenager.
Yeah.
And then you talk versus listen. I don't know if social media maybe for our young people, like, and for us, like, I'm a consumer of social media, probably way too much. We don't get a chance to be heard. We just look.
Right, and I think that's a big variable that a lot of people not only want to be heard, but they want to be seen. So there's that.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's that constant struggle, that constant fight. No matter what it is, if it's negative or positive, I just want to be heard or seen. It's
Heard or seen.
It's a tough thing, and as you know, these kids now have way more distractions nowadays than we ever had.
Yeah. Sadly, I think they're taking the blame of social media. I don't know, like, it's so easy as an older person. I just turned 50, and I probably did this as a parent to my kids when they were teenagers, but like placing blame, like, if you would just put your phone
Right.
down, like, your phone is the problem, your causes everything. And if you had the control over that, and it's not fair. Like, anybody that consumes social media or spends time on their device probably has the same issues.
Sure. For sure.
Or similar.
Yeah, I mean, there's good aspects of social media, right?
Yes, there is.
So
yeah.
It's that whole, again, it's then teaching that child or whoever that you own the phone, you have control to shut it down when you're done, or maybe a certain time of your day. Like, you have an hour per day, and you can break it up, you can put it all in one, but you have an hour, and you allot that hour.
Yeah. I've found recently there's a big trend for parents just to say no. And I don't know, I kind of struggle with that one a little bit. I don't know that that's realistic for young people. Like, we have to teach
Right.
them. Like, it's such a normal part of being a person today.
And that's going back.
Yeah.
I think it's going back to your earlier question. I didn't really touch on, but the state of mental health is that, it's always here. We're going to close that door. Don't go in there. Or that room's dark. We're gonna not go in that and bypass that way. It's no. Let's go in there and teach these kids to be ready and to what to look for. If you don't know something, how are you going to know what to do when you get to it? And I'm not wishing anything on anybody, but as you know, stress, hard times, crisis, maybe they will find you at some point in life, and
for
everybody.
Yeah.
And if you
Right.
go to it empty-handed and not having a clue, I feel like you're going to be in worse shape.
Yeah. I was reading that in your review about your book. Never underestimate the power of you, and talking about more like the things that you have learned to be able to like tools, if you will, to be able to handle
Oh,
really mental health.
absolutely. Yeah, I think that's what it's all about. Hence the title. I think that we all have what we need already inside of us. We may need somebody to lean on. We may need a professional to help steer us. But if we sit down and figure out what exactly we want, what our goals are, then we can take it from there and say, okay, well, how do I reach this? How can I accomplish this thing? And if you notice certain things about, let's say you quickly go to anger. Well, okay, well, let's figure out why and connect dots back to what happened. Where was it? Was it environmental? What were the factors in your anger? What were the factors in your anxiety, and figure out these and then take it from there. There's all these different levels, right? So we can say, well, I went to the soccer game and I was really excited, but then it rained and I got so mad and stormed off and I drove my car and it hit a mailbox. We can blame the rain, but it's really our reaction to the rain. So you can hate the snow, or you can go out and you can make snowballs and snow angels. It's your choice, because either way, you're going to have the same amount of snow in your life.
I'm just looking at, I printed off a review of your book, and I think this maybe is your words, but we all have mental health and we have the ability to improve. Maybe it's time we start paying more attention to its impacts it has on our daily living. That's interesting, like the snowball, the game. Do you feel like your book is for someone that's being proactive, or potentially someone who is trying to fix a problem, or is there room for
I think
both?
there's definitely room for both. It's more, I even say within the book, it's there's phases to all this. And I do think that this is more leaning for like the beginning phases. Maybe if you sort of know how to ride a bike, but you need training wheels or something like that, or if it's your first car, it's a used car. It's not going to be a nice fancy car, but this book will eventually lead you to that bigger, fancier book.
I like
Yeah,
that.
that's the way I see it. There's a lot of tools in there that I've learned that I still use, so I can honestly say they work for me. I talk about some holistic stuff, whether it be breathing, stretching, yoga type stuff. Seeking a therapist and knowing when to do that. There's a chapter in the book
Yes.
called Routine Maintenance that is about being proactive, because I think in our culture we are very much the opposite. Yes, we are
Reactive.
very reactive until if you have going back to the vehicle analogy, if you have a vehicle, you take more care for that vehicle than you probably do on your own body. You
Isn't that
you
the
go get
truth?
your oil
Yeah.
changed. You check the air pressure in the tires. You change the tires. You may even wash the car.
You wash it, you wax it,
Right.
you keep
So
it clean
these are routine
versus,
maintenance intervals, and sometimes we even get indicators. Shiny lights that pop up. Hey, you need to get an oil change, or hey, your gas is low. But we don't have
wow.
these indicators in real life. Sometimes we have them and we don't see them, and then we see them and it's too late.
Yeah, we've been taught to not see them. I think they're there.
Yeah, they are there. It's very hard to focus. It's that whole mindful aspect of it. If you're not aware, then you really have no ground to stand on. If you're not aware, you don't know where to look. You don't know what it is that you're dealing with.
I've read a lot about people who do have like clinical depression, probably more on the moderate to severe side, and how well they are able to hide what they're feeling. Like that's one of a trait of being
Sure. Yeah.
depressed. And
Professionals, that's what I call them. Yeah.
professionals, yeah.
It's a way of life for some of us. It's that old pair of jeans that you don't want to get rid of. They're so comfy. And you may have grown a little bit or gained a little weight, but you still put them jeans on no matter what. We feel safe in it, because if you look at strip down everything, it all goes back to survival. So these are all things that are survival. Anxiety kept us alive in the woods when we were, watching out for saber-toothed tigers. You know what I mean? But now that anxiety is at an all-time high, but there's no saber-toothed tigers. It's emails, it's other people, it's social media or whatever it is. So it's just a constant bombardment of these things. And again, if we don't learn, hey, what is anxiety? What does anxiety do to you? What is it? What are the effects that it has on your body even?
Yeah. We're trying to advocate for that a lot at Robbie's Hope, is some education for our school children, for our young people, age appropriate for middle schoolers and high schoolers. And I will tell you, it is a fight.
Is it with schools?
Yeah. Yeah. I understand that we ask a ton of schools. We try to put all of our societal problems to our schools. Schools can fix it. Schools can fix it. And our schools, most are underfunded, and we just keep asking too much. But I just kind of get angry sometimes what we are capable of teaching, juniors and seniors in high school at an AP level versus teaching everyone about how their brain works.
I'm with you. The whole beginning of my book talks on that and how we should incorporate this. And I'm talking even first grade and up, age appropriate, but incorporate it in a way where, hey, you know what? Today in first grade, we're going to color mandalas. And it doesn't matter if you stay in the line or whatever, but it's learning these skills, because somewhere along the lines, we've lost that play equals learning. And now it's just rush, rush, rush.
So many people are spending less time in pursuing creative type things, especially for young people and adults. It's really, and you can read, there's such a correlation between mental illness. And if you like you talked about, self-awareness and those check engine lights, we have to be creative, and we have to spend time in nature. We have to spend time off of our devices. We have to spend time with people that we love, spend time alone. And yet we're doing less and less of all of those things.
You nailed it. I talk a bit about that too in the beginning, is not only these skills in the school that we're talking about as far as, wellness, brain health, all this exercise, but also money management and time management are just so huge. And I don't know why we can't focus on these, because like you said, you can have social media time, you can do this, but allot time for it, because you can be on social media. You're like, it's just an hour. And then next week you're up to 50 hours. 50 hours out of your life, that's a good chunk. And now, you know what I mean? Go another 2 years into your life, see how much time wasted that you're doing, that you could be doing something a little bit more positive. That's all. I think it also kind of masks, like you said, it kind of masks our emotions, our feelings, our thoughts. It's like I guess an escape, you could call it, It's a distraction from what we need to do. And I think that a lot of this stems from, again, thoughts, feelings, and emotions, whether it's you're trying to do something to distract from uncomfortable feelings, or you don't want to talk about something, so let's hop on and play a quick game on my phone because then I can forget about it. But at the same time, here's the problem. We're not learning how to deal with that. We're not dealing with the process of breaking it down and saying, you know what, it's okay, I'm mad right now. And maybe if I could have somebody I can talk to that could help me voice it in a productive manner, then I can learn a huge interpersonal skill that it's going to be for the rest of my life. I'm going to have this skill and be able to say to somebody, hey, you know what? This is not right for me and I need a break, in a nice, respectful way. And look what you did. You just halted a train wreck,
So
it's very tough.
I find that, and I find that young people are, you can't categorize every generation and every group of people into one, But overall, I feel like young people are very willing to have these conversations, and they're doing a really nice job of learning to name their feelings and appropriate ways to act on their feelings. But I think I don't know, like I said, I'm 50. It's my generation that struggles a bit more to be able to do that. I mean, I was taught to sweep everything under the rug. You don't talk about it. And conversations, and on your podcast, you seem to focus a lot on the importance of conversations between people. Can you talk a little bit about maybe what a good conversation looks like, or what conversations from Tim's perspective?
Well, I'm not sure if I would categorize negative or positive. I think a conversation is a good thing to have. I think it could be helpful or unhelpful, but at the same time, if it's unhelpful, maybe you could walk away learning and say, hey, that wasn't really the greatest way I handle myself, or maybe that other person didn't handle themselves well, and I noticed myself getting a little bit rised up, but I kind of caught it and I stopped myself. So
I like that. It doesn't have to be negative
no,
or positive.
I look at things. I try to look at things as helpful or unhelpful, and whether it's helping me or hurting me, and obviously, whichever one it is, judge accordingly and move forward. But I think conversations we at Above Ground Podcast have very raw, open conversations. We had you on, and you had talked about Robbie, and I feel that talking about these specific topics of suicide and such are needed more so than just saying, hey, how are you doing? Are you okay? Because your story as a mother could actually be a helping hand for another mother who lost their child. And you cannot put a price on that. To have you just in a conversation, someone hearing it, what you dealt with, or maybe some tools that you used progressively along the way, years down the road to help them. I mean, that's what it's about. It's about the connections that you make.
Yeah, that actually leads right into my next question. Why are human connections and relationships so important to mental health?
Well, again, I think it can stem back into early days, where you had packs, I guess you could call them, and every little group took care of themselves, and each person had a specific job where maybe one person was more of the mother figure, one person was more of the father figure, one person was more of the hunter, one person was more of the food maker and the home creator and fixer, and all. Everybody had their role, right? And it goes back to what we were saying before, is we all want to be heard and seen. So now if everything's going 10,000 miles an hour, everybody has this, everybody has that, but where's my space? I don't fit in with these people. I don't play sports. I don't do this. So automatically, unfortunately, I don't really have a reason for it, but we kind of focus more on that loneliness and I don't fit in. And then we actually turn that into I'm not good enough. I'm less worthy, right? Which is it's a terrible thing to do, because it's simply not true. And I think the way the world's going, it's actually creating that kind of culturally. We're creating that culturally, is what I want to say, because everyone has their own niche, but at the same time, everyone wants other people to change and conform to the way that they want, instead of just letting people do what they want. If you want to go to church, awesome, go to church. If you don't want to go to church, that's awesome too. Don't go to church. If you want to wear purple hair, wear purple hair. You know what I mean? But just let people do what they want to do. And if they're not hurting you or anybody else, more power to them. And I think that's an example that we should all kind of lead by also, is that, don't hurt other people as well. But I think connection is really at the stem of everything. You know,
It's such a human
I think that's
need.
what it goes back to. It's a human need, and it just, I don't know, it creates something inside of us that is instinctual. Maybe it's just a need, as you said, that we all have this little need to kind of fit in and be a part of a group and have a voice and be seen. You know.
Hmm. Yeah, we're living in a world where we don't address our needs, and we
No.
don't like. I mean, it's so like the person with purple hair, or the person that's
Right.
different from you. There's so much focus on that, and that like differences are negative.
Right.
Versus, I bet you can have a connection probably with every person.
Right. And that's the thing. You nailed it. That's the thing is we look at differences as negative, and it's like, I love it. I think that's kind of what makes this country the way it is, with the diversity, is that everybody can just be what they want to be and do what they want to do. And let's not change that and make them be what I want them to be, because I think that has an effect on mental health as a whole too. As you as a person, if I'm telling you that I'm almost taking your autonomy away, that's going to affect your wellness.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
so again, just, let people do what they want and embrace the difference and maybe learn from that. Just because somebody has purple hair or they're wearing a black shirt, that doesn't mean that they don't have any kind of special talent, or they're dumb, or they don't know about this or that. There's something that we can learn from everybody.
Absolutely. Unpacking a lot. It's kind of just can feel heavy, but like we have to move forward together and continue put the effort into those connections and put those screens down. Pick up the phone.
Yeah, that too. That's another. And I think we're all actually thinking the same thing. Like, oh, I don't want to pick up the phone and sound stupid, or that person's looking at me. But you know what? They're thinking the same thing you are. So they're not really concentrating on looking at you. They're concentrating on thinking you're looking at them, instead of, hey, let's just do it and see what happens,
Yes.
I think what you guys are doing, Robbie's Hope, is awesome. I've said it before. We have some of your pamphlets that you guys, I think the ones that you hand out for schools.
Yeah, our adult handbook, a guide by teens on how to talk to teens. That's it,
the guide, yes. And we hand them out at events that we table. Yeah, they're great. I love them. I think it's such a great thing that you do.
Great. Thank you. We're working hard to just so that other kids have a chance and feel their worthiness, and bring the voice of the youth to the table. I don't want any other parents to sit in my shoes. I don't want other parents to be on future podcasts and having to be vulnerable about, their loss. Suicide is preventable.
Yeah.
Suicide
and that's
is
kind
preventable.
Of going back to my book. I think that's kind of where that kind of stemmed from. Was I don't look at myself as an author or somebody special that was able to do these things. I'm just an average guy. So if I can do it, I think you can do it, and the next person can do it. But if I can help you kind of get that first step or two down, I will do that.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's good to be average. It's good to be an average guy.
I don't mind. Look, I don't mind. I've been through so much. I've told myself so much negative things that I don't think anybody else could really do much damage at this point. So I got to the point where I'm just good with myself, and no matter what, I don't really have to say I'm average or put myself in here. I'm not good with categories. I don't want to be put in any category. I'm just because I wrote a book doesn't mean I'm an author. Just because I'm a mental health advocate doesn't mean I can't ride motorcycles or, whatever. I can do a lot of different things. And that's kind of what we were talking on too, is just because if somebody's into soccer, say, doesn't mean that that's their life. We don't take them and define them just because they play soccer. But for some reason,
We do that with
for
youth for some reason. Like, totally. We peg kids into these holes. Like, oh, you're a swimmer, therefore you do this A, B, C, D, and you repeat it every single day, and your whole personality is wrapped up into that versus, oh my gosh, let's let kids dibble in this and try that.
Right.
And,
That's exactly what I was just going to say. I think as a culture, we kind of do that now, and just, I don't know what it is. We need to pinpoint certain things and define people by what they do and put them into categories instead of just saying, hey, I know that guy. I think they are a swimmer, and I know her. She plays soccer, but I don't know what else she does. Right. Maybe say hi, or maybe sit down to them next to them at lunch and have a conversation.
I was just reading a really interesting study. It said that most kids don't really know what their parents do. And it really struck me, like, wow. Like, you know, we start asking our middle school kids, what are you going to be? What are you going to be? What are you going to do? Like, what's your path? And yet a lot of kids can't even name what their parents do.
That's wild.
Yeah, like there is an opportunity for some conversation. Absolutely. Like, oh my gosh, I just found that super
I have a question for you since you just brought that up. Do you think that schools kind of bringing these questions to the table, like if they're maybe in 10th grade, I don't know what year they start doing it, but if they start saying, hey, do you have an idea of what you want to do, where you want to go, where are you thinking of going to college? Do you think that adds pressure and stress to these kids' everyday lives? Okay.
Yeah, I think it does, because I listen to kids and I think kids absolutely express that. It's certainly, we have to ask the question as adults, because developmentally we have to let our kids, I mean, there is a next chapter after high school for kids, like, but we need to give them learning opportunities to explore. We don't do a good job educating kids of what different paths are available to them, what it actually means to be this profession, to be, say, engineer, to be a financial advisor, or to be a carpenter, or to be, kids have no idea. It's fascinating what kids do know growing up with the world in their hand. They're so knowledgeable, but like the how applicable their knowledge isn't always there. And I think that's the fault of adults. It's not the kids' fault. In our schools, I mean, my mother was a public educator, so I believe in public education. But I think we as, taxpayers and asking for public education and supporting it, we can ask for different things. And we have to bring the values of the society. Like, we have created the schools that we have. And it's probably time for some.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. Change. I was just going to say the same thing. I have nothing against public schools or teachers, but it's the system as a whole. It's just antiquated. And then you get the state involved and let them have more control than they should, and you just get more problems. That's my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned like financial management.
Absolutely.
Teaching kids financial, like, I was just at the drive-thru the other day and I was talking about tips, and I was paying, and it was a young person. She was a senior in high school. So whenever I have the opportunity to interact with a young person, I just become very chatty. And I was like, so what does Venmo mean to you? And versus like real cash, and like, but their concept of money is so very, very different than we're not teaching what's really needed.
I think like one of the variables, like you said, is actually holding your money. You know, kids, a lot of the kids these days, they don't see it or actually physically touch their money and hold it and say, look at it and count it. You know, they're just like, Venmo this, or I have this on this, or Apple Pay, or whatever it is. And it's like, that might be okay, but as long as you know and understand what you're doing. And I used to do that as a father when my son was younger. He would play games on his iPad, and he would want to like get a gift card so he can like buy more coins or whatever. And I tried to say, here, look, I will do this, but just know that this is what you're going to get. So think about it before you just spend on all these coins, because down the road you might want to get a ladder or a hammer or something. So, I try to do that stuff, but I think that's again what we need to start doing is, there's other options.
Yeah. It's almost like you could change the same conversation, the concept of like what money is to young people, to their feelings, to their mental health skills. And it's not their fault. Like we need to do this as a society. Like mental health is not just applicable to
mental health is health. If you don't have mental health, then you do not have health. I will say that. And it's nobody's fault. Yeah. I grew up in a time where it was a little bit different than it is now, but my parents did the best they could. And that's what you have to accept and say, okay, now this is what I have. Maybe it's a pile of stuff. Maybe it's a dump truck pile of stuff, but it doesn't matter. Now it's my situation, my responsibility. Don't go blaming anybody. And I know a lot of people hate this, but don't fall into the victim mentality. And, I think if we take it and say, hey, you know what? Now this is mine. Accept the fact that your parents did the best they could. It was not intentional. And just one step at a time, one day at a time.
You talk about the DIY.
That's what it for me. Yeah.
And
that's how I did it. I didn't necessarily have a good support system. I didn't have the family that was open to talking about it. And some of that is my fault 100%, because even now that I know better, I still struggle to talk with my dad about things. It's like that's 40 years of doing that. It's very hard to break that. And it's that brings that uncomfortable feeling, right? So it goes back to that too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I come at it from my own perspective, and these are the things that I learned, but I also engulfed myself with mental health as a whole. Like it's a lifestyle for me. I live it. I
hear that. And you're like the way you talk, like being just average Tim, like you're doing the work.
I have to, I made a choice.
We all do.
There was, I say it in the book, I made a choice that it was either move forward, do something about this and move forward, or make the decision final and end my life. That's the two choices that I put myself in front of, and I chose the latter. And I have to work towards it. I have to work every day, and I learn every day, and I put tools to use every day.
Yeah. I'm putting one of my breathing techniques to work.
Sorry.
Because it's just a lot. No, I mean, it's vulnerable, and just like being real, and not placing blame and not playing the victim card. I will tell you, I still have to make that choice. Truly, I was at the grocery store today, and somebody gave me this nasty look, and I was like, part of me wanted to jump to if you know what I carry on a daily basis. And I was like, Kari, wait, that is not that person's fault. Maybe they're having the bad day, and take a step back and doing the work to be the best person that I can be.
And you know what?
Day.
Doing that, you are the stronger person to stop and say, I'm going to take a breath. I notice these feelings and thoughts come up, and I'm not going to react to them. That is the definition of strength in my book. That is a warrior. I'm honest. That's how I feel, because I know those feelings. I know those thoughts, and they pop up for me. And I know some days it's a lot to stop and stand there, take a breath, and say to myself, hey, you know what? That person didn't cut me off intentionally. Maybe their child is in danger and they're rushing somewhere.
Yeah. Just taking the time and trying to think about what that other person is experiencing.
Because you're really, in the end, you're really taking the time and doing what's best for you, because you don't want to get riled up. You don't want to like make a scene in a grocery store. You don't want to be living in stress and raise your cortisol levels.
Yeah.
There's a lot.
This is it is a lot. This is so good. This has been a great conversation.
Thank you for having me.
So we end every podcast with the same question. So here's your chance, Tim. What does the world need to hear right now?
Wow. What does the world need to hear right now? I think that, I don't know if this sounds a little catty, but we're all one. There's no you or them or him or her. We're all humans. And this is all our responsibility. This is all our fight. It's not theirs. I'm not going to worry about it because it's not my generation. We're all in this together. We are all
one. Let's end with that. Tim Parent, thank you so much for being our guest today on Hopeful Conversations. And tune in again to our listeners, and remember, hope. Hold on, pain ends. Thanks, Tim.